Amazing. Thank you so much, Aaron. That was such a kind introduction. And I've been having such a lovely evening this evening. You're all really cool people, all of the people who are launching tonight. It's kind of intimidating. So as Aaron mentioned, I'm going to be reading from Rhizomes, and I'll be reading from the book itself. So it's quite large, and I think my arm will start to ache by the end, but I think that will all be part of the performance. But to give a small bit of context for this piece, I don't want to call it my lockdown project, because it was a lockdown project, but it was so much more than that. I was put on furlough, and during those months I spent every day with my partner walking across the quite well-known golf course that sits quite nearby to my home, and trespassing essentially on what costs hundreds of thousands of pounds to have a membership on for free every single day, and veering further and further from the kind of public footpath that I am normally able to access. And as I was kind of doing this trespassing, this kind of political and poetic act, I was finding different ways to interact with my surrounding landscape. I'm particularly interested in embodied research and embodied art practice. As people have known from Dorothy, I tend to enjoy kind of dunking myself in bodies of water alongside writing about bodies of water. So this kind of gave me the opportunity to get closer to nature, have a look at root systems, have a look at stems, take rubbings from trees, make recordings, etc. But towards the summer, the common on the other side of the golf course caught fire. There was a massive wildfire. It lasted 10 days. It was kind of horrendous. We ended up having to kind of pack an escape kit just in case the smoke, because the smoke kept changing direction and it was coming near our house. So that definitely plays a prominent role within the collection. I'm going to read from 3 different chunks of the collection, and for one of the chunks my partner is just on the other side of the sofa, and she's going to help me out because I need a couple of different voices. But to begin with, I'm going to read, told you it was going to be hard to make my way through this book. I'm going to read Murmur or Back to Nature. Everything was fucked, and the silence and the loss or the day-to-day had got to me or all of us, and they claimed we were getting back to nature, or some of us noticed more plant varieties, but many ignored it all and stared at an island on a screen. There was a buzz, and it wasn't the planes or the bees because they were declining, and we couldn't stop that. It was a buzz or murmur or sign of life where there was none. 7th of the 8th, 2020. Everything was plant varieties. Claim, murmur, screen, buzz. When the ash fell, I packed an escape kit. Hand to the head, the gesture of a gun. The ground was black and the trees were black and the road was blocked. So we drove out and got out and watched for the orange plume and waited for the spit of rain. 8th of the 8th, 2020. Retrospective plume. Scale as spit or common. It was all fucked, but her whiskers quivered. And I know there was a hole in the side of her head, but she knew there was something turning, and the rhododendron were blooming, and we didn't know if things made sense or if they didn't. 10th of the 8th, 2020. Quivered sense, and turning and turning and turning and turning and turning. During these days, these weeks, the trespassing wasn't bad. Some of us knew this was a possibility and took full advantage. Heather, heat, peat, ice, tiptoe, do your thing and don't look back. Some call this tranquility, or chaos of a hoof or hooves. Nothing was maintained, so we tried not to think between these 3 miles. 13th of the 4th, 2020. Maintain a revision, 3 times over, trespass of advantage. Look back. We noticed that the trees had been chopped and it felt like a straightforward metaphor. They said it would stop the flames from jumping, so we agreed on a new distance between the trees and trenches near the road and the... But how many times have you heard this story? 1st of the 9th, 2020. Metaphor between trees and trenches. It was all connected. There was summer, then winter, and the geese left and returned like nothing was fucked, and we questioned if we were wrong about it all. 3rd of the 11th, 2020. Question as connection. The road, the hoof, the rhododendron, the ash, the murmur. Some of us closed our eyes to pray, to see, to think, to know that we weren't interacting with the language of it, but the truth and spill, and let's be honest, our motivation swayed with the wind. 5th of the 4th, 2020. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. There wasn't a revolution or uprising, and attempts at this were banned, and we understood the why nots and the whys, and resentment grew from one to the other, and we backed away from the problem at hand. 20th of the 5th, 2020. Hand resentment from one to the other. Watch as the wing spans. We knew that planning was needed, so I grew tomatoes, blushing from green to red, hoping this would mean something. And it did for a while. 11th of the 8th, 2020. While as fleeting, red, abstract. This moment was comfortable. Some of us wrote about how it was all fucked and tried to stamp the echo of a scream onto the page, but that mimicry or attempt could not resonate beyond our fingers. 12th of the 8th, 2020. So I'm now going to invite Laura just to help me out for a minute. I was actually very, very excited to hear Chris reading from a poem about Chernobyl, although the majority of the work in this book is quite site specific in relation to where I live, the kind of 3 miles around my home. There's one section that really deviates, and that section formed as part of a digital fixation is what I'd call it. And I was looking at different kind of sites associated with the nuclear, but in relation to kind of the growth of natural things there. So I was looking at Chernobyl, I was looking at the Sellafield nuclear station in Cumbria as well. So this piece is called Exclusion Zones or Fixation, and the poems actually sit within the footnotes entirely. Oh, I don't know what side to hold the book at. 1. Breeze or tide shifting the weight of seismic discharge, reeking of isotopic putrefaction as completion turns to decades. 2. Liquid used for cooling, a soft murmur, patches of bleach or white feathers, question of marine or terrestrial, in the hot zone, silence, catch, a glimpse or tremble. This is only the beginning or paced repopulation, typically nocturnal, release in human absence, or consider this omen. Wolves thicken in contamination or mark agriculture, and uncontained, a knock to the ground or back of the throat, soiling the inhabitable. 3. Miniature gravestones, pitter or patter, unremarkably, fled to feral or secure a mouse, if you dare. Feline leukemia settles. 4. Build a silo in 1950. Foxgloves grow in the foreground or focus, reinstate a commitment to the Irish sea or sea scale. Your children may bathe in her water. Listen carefully or closely for atrophy. 5. Trap any radioactive bore.
Trap any radioactive bore. Trap any radioactive bore.
Or an eerie look or loss of control melting downward. Strain 7 years later, this used to be a flower or plant shop where we step through dust, or a retired time capsule, spewing partially in effect or affect, encourage extensive, humming toxin settlement, inch by inch, town by town, ready to reopen the top layer. 6. Plutonium or water stored in plastic bottles inform a red kite or whistle blower to drop or reprocess the hazard until her bloom covers Western Europe. 7. Classified top secret. The pile burns on contact with air. Pigment of a whale, thin, the principle of vague.
Thin.
Thank you, and thanks, Laura. And the last section I'm going to read from is called All Progress, and I have a sound recording to play whilst I'm reading, so just bear with me. I actually discovered that these dungarees are quite useful in that there's a little pocket here, and during the Runnymede festival that Robert Hampson organised, I saw that Robert's in the audience tonight. Hi, Robert. I also used a sound recording. I managed to pop it in my pocket for the duration of the performance, and it was very helpful. So there's a little bit of context as to why I'm putting that there. And then each of us were multiplied, and everything came with range or rage. I asked if we were close, and how far does naming take us beyond the crowd and into an assemblage? And then we were told thought lags behind nature. It all started from home, but distance is relative. 3 reels ago, the comparison between a cut up and cutting highlighted in radical pink. And the brackets were linear and several, and you say something about my voice and answer the phone, and I'm left Googling what is a taproot, but this is not relevant. To my surprise, connections fell here and there. It was multiple and then accurate, and I said it would spread and shatter. There was a mention of sobriety and so on, but we moved towards the bulb and tuber and root and radical. What is a body without organs? A kind of husk, or several husks or bodies? We get the distinct feeling or thought that the same can be said for rats. And what of coding or play? And when a swarm breaks loose at any point, any of us or several of us could be connected to anything other. And the point or crux of it all is that we must be. Some of us watched it unfold on the telly, others in the cities. This line reshaped each year. When I thought of being multiple, I feared that we were close, and I turned towards the patio to form a weave of foliage, and there were several weavers. The taproot and rat signified this much. Remember, it is always possible to break a language. Each of us was several, and the coffee granules floated to the top of the basin. Groups, basically formations that lag or husk upon checking. We were only on page 7, but no matter, the loss is not yours. And to be honest, overturning the structure was and wasn't the next step. De facto, a chain of events. I made a list and you continued your business. Several ideas came ready-made and others were torn or reversed or redacted into an open map, and the wasp was sick of the ordeal. There is no direction of thought and all we know was fleeting. The same goes for memory. Go beyond the 1, 2, 1, 2 to read and finally take this with a pinch of each of us. Thank you.